All right, it's time to release our software. And if you're kind of confused and think like, wait, are we really done with 62304 compliance so far? That's a good question. Let's actually take a look and then tidy up some loose ends. So if you go to formwork, you can navigate to this thing called sanity check here. And you can see we're still missing a ton of stuff. And most importantly, we haven't talked about all these other items on the left side, especially regarding risk analysis and regarding usability. But that's something I'll be talking about in some other videos, so we'll actually skip those for today. However, we can still actually focus on some of the errors we're seeing in the sanity check here. So you can see these records, these are actually haven't been released yet, which is a problem. So you have to release your records before you actually release a version of your medical device. And what were records? Records were these rich text, well, documents, well, things, not really documents, but records in this records section. And you can see, okay, they're still drafts. So we probably should be releasing them. Oh, I have unsafe changes, whatever. Okay, and now the thing with records is, and this is a bit overlapping with 13485 videos, records you can either release yourself or release with someone else who reviews it. That's kind of like a distinction because the standard is kind of like ambiguous whether records really always need a review. Strictly speaking, no. So you could also release them yourself, and it depends on the policies of your company or your startup, how you want to release records. Personally, I like to release stuff myself because I don't have to wait for anyone else, and it's just, yeah, whatever. Okay, so we need to release this. You hit release yourself, enter your email and login again. No, I don't want to remember this password. And then, yeah, and then you can add a comment, but this is optional. And then we just hit release, and then it's released. You can see released on today. So we go back, and then this is released. We also need to release this. Oh man, this is so clunky. Yeah, FDA compliance, great. Okay, so that's really cool. You can, if you kind of like change your mind, I think you can't unrelease things, but you can amend it. So you could say like, I actually wanted to make some changes to the software development plan. You can hit edit, amend, and then it still allows you to edit it. However, you should probably add a comment here which explains why you're editing it after it has been released. All right, so this is done. So we've already successfully removed some sanity check errors here. Now we have still a stakeholder where the description is blank. Maybe as a quick reminder, these stakeholders, we didn't really talk that much about them. They are essentially part of 13485 compliance, but long story short is like this was the one level above software requirements. So you have software requirements where, in my opinion, you spend most of your time documenting stuff because those are like your software features, as you can see here. And again, aim for 20 to 30 high-level descriptions. But essentially what you also need is like this one higher level above the software requirements where you document the users and their user needs. And just as a quick reminder, we had created one stakeholder here, one user who is the patient. And then we had one user need for that stakeholder, get treatment for depression. Of course, this is extremely minimalistic. You could add some more. For example, you could add a physician as a stakeholder and say like, okay, I want to like view the treatment progress from a patient using this depression app. And of course, for each stakeholder, you could add more than one user need. You could add like 2 or 3 or 5 or even more. But again, generally speaking, if you aim for few entries on a high level, like high documentation level, this is very beneficial for keeping the documentation very minimalistic. All right, so we talked about stakeholders and user needs. Let's go back to the sanity check, and you can see the description is blank. And oh, if I click here, it actually takes me there. So this was the patient, and then I should probably add a description. Hit edit, and then let's just say, okay, whatever, typical age, 20 to 40 or so, and then just add some characteristics maybe which you would take into consideration when developing software for this person. And let's say, like able to use a smartphone. Yeah. well, and has depression, but that's kind of obvious. Let's just, or maybe let's actually say like suffers from depression, or maybe like mild. All these apps usually they treat mild depression because I think with more severe depression, I think it's considered too risky, and those people should go to a hospital or visit a psychotherapist. So you could kind of like say, okay, yeah, we add this description here, it's mild depression. Okay, save. Cool. So another sanity check error done. User needs are missing. Okay, so we have some software requirements here which are not linked to user needs. We can actually look at the requirements overview here. It's actually it's not very helpful. We have to look through them separately. Okay, so this is linked to a user need here. The first one. How about number 3? Also linked. This is not linked. Okay, so this is quite interesting because you see, hey, we have a software requirement and authenticate users, but it's not linked to a user need. Yeah, I don't know. How would we solve this? Like, who wants to keep data safe? I mean, it could be the manufacturer, actually. It could also be the user. Let's keep things simple and make it the user. So you create a new user need and then link it to the patient, and then like say like data is stored securely, for example. Like, of course, I as a patient, I don't want my data to be leaked to the internet. That makes sense. Probably describe it like, well, I mean, people don't like it when their data gets leaked, obviously. Okay, now we can already link this to the software requirement. Number 2, save, and then check the sanity check. Yeah, so this is looking good. We need to add software tests for number 2 and number 3. I'm just gonna actually create one software test which tests both of them to keep things simple here, and then like a software test is like go through the first time app setup after installing it. Okay, so the idea would be you run through the first time user setup. Essentially, you download the app and then you go through the introductory screen and all that stuff. Okay, I'll keep things simple here. I'll keep things simple here too. Download from App Store. Do introduction screens, whatever. Okay, I'll keep this simple. Like, actually, have the expected steps here. Number 2 and 3, save, sanity check, looking good. We'll talk about the review in a bit. Software tests. Wait, software test. Oh, the test runs for software test 2 are missing. So we actually have to execute this test. Let's do it. Software test run before release, whatever. Why am I capitalizing this? Then let's actually just do both, all the tests we have. And then you can see, cool, we have this protocol. Let's just say, okay, this was great success, like expected results, yada, yada, you know how to do this. Whoops, save. Same here. Okay, so this was a success. Let's go back. Okay, we're looking great. Oh, it's missing a description, whatever. Doing this before release. Here you would be actually like explaining more about your setup. Like you would say like, okay, you're running this on an iPhone 15, for example, and other hardware or software limitations you have, like iOS version, for example. All right, we're looking good. Okay, user tests are actually something which is part of the usability video. I'll just do them super briefly as kind of a quick primer so we can see that these errors kind of like disappear. So long story short, like you have for software requirements, you have software tests. That makes sense. Each software requirement here needs to be covered by at least one software test. And you actually have the same thing for user needs. So the user needs, they were one level higher but above software requirements. And the user needs themselves, they also need their own tests. And these are actually usability tests. So we have 2 user needs, data is stored securely. Actually, by the way, not a great user need. Get treatment for depression, this is a great one. And now each of them should be tested in user tests. And typically how you test those in usability studies is you have like 5 people of the target user group, for example, patients here, actually going through these steps. So I'll just do this in a very minimalistic way so we kind of like can make some progress here. I'll create a new user test, and it's extremely simple. It's very similar to creating a software test. Again, we want to cover all user needs with this simple test. And then like we call the test like download the app and set it up. And then you just kind of like say, okay, it's like the target user group, like the user group is like patients in the age 20 to 40 or whatever who know how to use a smartphone. And then you could say like, okay, 5 users or whatever. And then here you have the setup. And again, the setup is quite similar to software tests, except that it's more from the user level. It's not on a technical level, like you set up the app. It's like, you would say like, you would give them actual human instructions, like, okay, download, like search for app XYZ on the App Store, download it, and download it, set it up. And like, you don't want to be like overly, you don't want to be overly specific here, because like you want to actually test if users can actually use your app successfully. But again, more in the other videos. Okay, so we save that. We also have to execute that in a software test, a user test run. Let's do like user test with 5 users. First user test with 5 users, and then here we execute this, and again the screen is very similar. Let's just say this was a success, and we'll talk about more in the usability video. Back to the sanity check, and now this is interesting. Now we're missing reviews, and this makes a lot of sense. This is an extremely cool feature in Formwork where you can, you have to review software requirements and user needs, and that's something you have to do before your release. So what do I mean by that? The standard, the 62304, has certain criteria which you need to kind of like fulfill and document when reviewing your software requirements. And this is best illustrated if we look at the actual checklist for software requirements review in our template section. Here it is. So you can find it in the 62304 template section, as always. And let's just go through these items, and then you kind of like get a better impression, and then you can kind of like see how Formwork kind of like has you covered there. So technically you would need to like fill out this checklist every time you do a new software release, and this checklist kind of like covers your software requirements. So you can see, okay, it has items like checklist here, software requirements are traceable to design inputs or risk control measures. And then you could see like, wait, why do I have to sign off on this? Like this doesn't really make sense. Like it's so simple. And that's because it's simple in Formwork. In Formwork, you ensure that your software requirements are always traceable to like user needs, as we saw. So you have the sanity check, which shows you stuff. And then you have this very simple way of linking software requirements to user needs, for example. But if you would be building this in whatever other system, like if you would do your documentation in Google Sheets, Google Docs, or Jira or so, then of course it's quite likely that something kind of like gets screwed up, or you like will need to ensure that all these linkages, these traceability things are actually given, so that you actually have the correct traceability. In this case, software requirements to design inputs and risk control measures, and we'll be talking about risk control in another video course. All right, and then you have to sign off on software requirements are complete, are understandable, include user interface requirements for whatever reason, include IT security requirements, and are testable. And why do you have to do all of that? All of that sounds super useless, and that's essentially because the standard really actually spells it out. So the standard kind of like says, you as the manufacturer, you have to ensure that software requirements are complete, and then the implementation for that is like you have to fill out a crappy checklist where you say, oh my god, our software requirements are complete, yes, and then you kind of like release this document based on your document and record control process. In Formwork, it's a few clicks. As we remember, you just release the document. But if you're using Google Drive or so, then you have to like sign it as a PDF or whatever, then it gets a bit more messy. here you can add comments, and then here you kind of like tick the checkbox that the software requirements passed, and then that's it. But that's the crappy implementation if you're not using formwork. The cool thing is, in formwork, you have a way more elegant way of doing things. So if you choose to use formwork, you can go to the software requirements list here. You can see like this list of items is still a draft. When you're done, you can send it for review. And let's actually click this. And oh my God, you have all these review criteria. You actually have them preloaded in formwork already. So I didn't do anything for this to appear. These are the criteria we already set up for you. And these are the 62304 criteria. So you can already say like, hey, cool, awesome, I'll just not touch this text because there's really no rational sense to change this. And then you can say like, you could kind of like say, I mean, technically I wouldn't have to say anything. I could add a comment here to like tell reviewers, because I'm sending this to other people, to tell reviewers like, hey, please take a look at the software requirements list, yada, yada, yada. This is like what I changed, but actually I could just not do it. Then you like select reviewers, and this is like the typical formwork review process. So you select reviewers by role. I'll send it to myself. Actually, you can enable or disable self review in the settings. Then you send it for review, and then I get this notification via email that I should be reviewing stuff. And at the same time, when I now navigate here, and this might be another person again, if you don't send it to yourself, you can review this. Re-enter my stuff. Okay, you have the review criteria, and now you can like approve or reject. Obviously, we should be approving this. And that's done. So now you can see there's a review and approval below, and it's approved. Here are the criteria and approved by me. So that's solved. So we just like kind of like probably saved minutes or maybe even half an hour of signing documents manually by just doing a few clicks here. And I think that was extremely cool. Well, as cool as regulatory software gets. I think that was extremely cool because now we don't have to fill out this super clunky document. All right, back to the sanity check. We have to do the same thing for the user needs. Let's do that super briefly. By the way, you have slightly different criteria here, I think, because there's a slightly different template. User needs review. Okay, so there's a slightly different template. I won't go through that in detail. You can read it up yourself. You find the criteria here too. And then I'll just self-review this again. Review, re-enter stuff, approve, and we're good. Sanity check. Okay, no errors. We're doing great. And now we can release our software. We go to the releases page. And then still contains requirements which are not approved. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, yeah, we also have to do this for, we also have to do this for the stakeholders. Oh man, just to ensure that they're complete. Approve. Software tests and user tests. Okay, you get the idea. So now we would have to do this for the software test too and for the user test too. That makes sense. I won't do that here because it'll get super repetitive for you. And now you can release it. So you release it by either, so first you navigate to releases, select the release, and then you say like, okay, everything looks good. Click here to release it, or you can also go to the top right and click on release. And then if you click on that, you can see, hey, after this, you can't make any further changes to this release because, well, it's kind of like frozen. So even though there's not super complete, let's just do that so you've seen it once. Oh my God, release successful. So we got a crazy confetti animation, and you get a very friendly congratulation from us. This is us. We're just 5 people, by the way. Okay, so now you can actually see on the left side, it's no longer a draft. 0.1 is now released. You can kind of like view your release here. So all of that is good. And that's cool. And now we could create a new release, and that, by the way, would copy over all the things, all the like software requirements, all the records, and kind of like save you a lot of time on creating your next release. But the cool thing also is you can actually undo this as long as you haven't created the next release. You can still kind of like say, hey, I want to revert this because I did it by accident, or I actually want to add some more features to this release, that's still possible as long as you haven't created the next release, as long as this is like the newest one. So we could actually do that. And then it's actually undone again, and now it's a draft. Cool, yeah. So that's how you release software. The kind of like the big thing, of course, kind of like is how would you do that if you wouldn't be using Formwork? Because in Formwork this looked extremely simple and extremely easy. However, this is not the case if you use other software. So as a quick reminder then, if you would be doing this in other software, you would have to go through all these checklists. So you have like a checklist for software requirements review, for user needs review. Do we have more? No, that's kind of like it. And we didn't really even look at the software release checklist. So the software release checklist, and this is kind of like implicitly covered in the review process, which you had here. And you would have to fill out all these like different checklists, and that would be a lot of work, and you would probably spend quite a lot of time if you wouldn't be using Formwork. But technically it's possible. You would be just filling out a lot of checklists. All right, so that's it with the release. What did we do today? We cleaned up a lot of stuff, guided by the sanity check, which was extremely helpful. Well, I think it's extremely helpful. And then we released the software. We created a few more documentation things because we were actually missing them. What we'll be doing in the next few videos is we'll be talking about what you can do once your software is released, like how do you manage changes and all that stuff. And also we'll go through the standard to actually see if we actually missed anything, because so far it actually looked fairly simple, and that's always that always gives you a bad gut feeling with regulation, because usually stuff is very complex and painful, so we might have missed something in the 63304. All right, so that's enough for the release so far. So good luck releasing your software, and then talk to you in the next video.